In today's video, I'll be showing you why I stopped recommending this specific spending strategy to retirees and why it might be harming your retirement more than you think. Over the years, I've seen firsthand how the right spending strategy can make or break your retirement. And that's exactly why we're making this video today, to show you this outdated strategy and, more importantly, how to optimize your retirement spending strategy. Let's get right into it. The spending strategy that I'm referring to is the 4% rule. This decades-old approach has been widely recommended as the safe spending strategy for retirees, and it's the rule that most of your big institutions use to determine if you're retirement ready or not. The 4% rule suggests withdrawing 4% of your retirement portfolio in your first year and then adjusting that amount for inflation each subsequent year. Now, the problems making the 4% rule risky are that it assumes you keep the portfolio allocated a certain way, usually a 60-40 or 80-20. And if you don't do that, then you can't really trust that the 4% rule will sustain your withdrawals because your allocation is a factor making the 4% rule safe. The rule also is difficult to implement when you look at how spending naturally fluctuates during the retirement phases. Meaning, if you're pulling 4% from $1 million and you need to pay for something in addition to that 4%, how do you do that? It's not impossible to do, but it's also not something that people tend to deal with correctly. Now, it's common for people to believe certain things about the 4% rule. They believe that you can start withdrawing 4% in year one, increasing it with inflation each year without the fear of ever running out of money. They assume that retirement spending only changes with inflation, not our lifestyle or market changes. They believe the 4% rule works in any market condition because it's based on historical data. And they also believe that you don't need to adjust withdrawals even in severe market downturns. And we need to be careful assuming these things. Now, after hearing about these common misconceptions about the 4% rule, you might be wondering where you stand with your own retirement preparation. And what I've learned from working with hundreds of successful professionals is that most people aren't struggling with the plan itself. They're struggling with knowing how to make the right retirement decisions. The truth is, retirement success isn't just about one specific thing. It's about understanding all the pieces and how they need to work together for a successful retirement. And that's exactly why we offer to speak with you at no cost and discuss what it might look like for you to optimize your plan for your eventual retirement. I'll put a link in the description if you want to schedule a call. We'd be happy to meet with you. Now back to the video. So I found that the underlying beliefs people have about the 4% rule lead to some unintended consequences that can impact how well it goes in retirement. One thing that happens is they underspend in years when they could spend more, and they overspend in years when they need less. And that's because this particular withdrawal plan has them spending a linear amount that just slightly goes up each year forever and ever. And that's not what people like to do. People have personal needs and situations that require different amounts of money sometimes. Sure, we want that steady monthly income. That's a given. But sometimes we pay for weddings. Sometimes something extra is required, like maybe we want to pay cash for a car. Knowing how to navigate real life situations can create unnecessary stress and a feeling of maybe not enjoying retirement fully. The 4% rule would be better if it checked in with how retirement is going and it helped us to know that we're not flying blind as we go years into retirement. It would be better if it had a way to make adjustments for how spending naturally changes throughout retirement rather than being a fixed rule. If we needed extra money for something, it would smooth out spending for the rest of our retirement and keep us on track. Or if things are going better than planned, it would allow us to know that so we could spend more. Or if things are going worse than planned, it would help us to know that so that we could adjust the spending plan. People want that steady monthly income, and they also want to know when it's possible or necessary to be flexible with it. Since modern retirement spending strategies are replacing the 4% rule, let's take a look at a real-world scenario of someone using the 4% rule and how they improve their retirement plan by changing their strategy. Let's use an imaginary Tommy Tomkins. He's 65. He's going to follow the 4% rule perfectly. He's going to withdraw $40,000 from his $1 million account, divide that into 12 payments. The following year, he's going to withdraw the same amount. and he's going to add whatever inflation was for the year. If he needs to spend any more than that amount for any reason, he's going to bite his lip and stay the course. He's going to do this year after year, and in years when the market drops and scares him, he's not going to change his course. He's basing his faith in the 20-year-old study, which is where we came up with this 4%. In bad years, he's consistent, and when he has really good years, he's not spending more than the 4% rule allows. Even if his grandkids grow to the age where they would appreciate Disney World, if it doesn't fit in, he doesn't take them. As he sees his accounts grow to massive values, he doesn't know if he can afford to spend more. After all, some of that money may be needed for the future for something. The experience creates a feeling of sort of being in the dark all the time. Now let's talk about if Tommy were to implement a more modern withdrawal strategy. And really, with any helpful spending strategy, you want to meet the criteria of this 5-point checklist. Number 1, dynamic adjustment. 2, clear spending boundaries. 3, inflation protection. 4, lifestyle flexibility. And 5, long-term sustainability. With dynamic adjustment, Tommy wanted it to provide that steady monthly income and not change very frequently, but it should be able to help him to easily account for adjustments when they're needed. For example, if Tommy retired in 1960, the market and economy was facing stagflation, and his ability to spend, that is, his spending capacity, would be much lower than, say, he had retired at the beginning of a more favorable time periods. And guess what? None of us knows what the future holds. We want to be able to take advantage of a good future or adapt to a more challenging future to protect our long-term security. Tommy had clear spending boundaries, and the way that we can accomplish that is by setting a specific upper and lower limit for spending. You want to determine when my portfolio reaches X, then I'm going to increase my spending, but in times that it reaches Y, then I'm going to protect my long-term sustainability by adjusting my spending for a season. Similar to the 4% rule, he had inflation protection where he would get a raise for inflation each year. But a better way of planning for inflation is to make sure that you're accounting for both general inflation, but also for specific expense categories that might inflate differently, like healthcare or food. He had a lifestyle flexibility rather than a rigid rule. The withdrawal plan needs to accommodate the different spending phases of retirement and allow for both essential and discretionary spending adjustments. When Tommy wanted to pay cash for his new 30x40 pole barn, he had a way to smooth out his steady monthly withdrawals. And I'm not saying he could spend anything and everything he wanted to, but he had an easy way to check in with the plan and explore his current spending in relationship to his goals. And most importantly, all withdrawal plans want that long-term sustainability, and Tommy certainly had that. But rather than being in the dark and feeling like he was flying blind with his spending, he had clear indicators of long-term portfolio health, because everybody wants to know that their current spending is not harming the future of their goals. After years of retirement planning, what really opened my eyes to watching the 4% rule repeatedly fail my clients in real-world scenarios. While this strategy looks great on paper, the reality is quite different. Through working with hundreds of retirees, I've discovered something critical. The most successful retirees take a completely different approach to managing their money. In fact, following this strategy may actually increase your risk of running out of money in retirement. If you want us to analyze your retirement plan and show you how to better strategize your plan, click the first link in the description. You can book a complimentary call. Be happy to visit with you. I'll see you in the next one.